Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another edition. I'm going to talk about something today I've never talked about before. Which is, I laugh because how many times do I start off with that? And it kind of amazes me that I continue to find things that I haven't thought of or talked about. And this one is a money script. And it's the money script of, I don't deserve money. Now, this is one of the top 10 money scripts that we talk about in Wired for Wealth. And I think we may even have that in Facilitating Financial Health too. But it's a really popular money script, and it's possible to have a money script of I don't deserve money, and then a money script of I do deserve money, which are conflicting and offsetting, but are polarizations or polarized money scripts are pretty common. But today I just want to deal with the money script that says, I don't deserve money. Now, a person that has this money script, that belief is completely detached. Whether anybody else thinks that you do deserve money. So society, family, friends, co-workers, you name it, could really believe and feel, although a belief is not a feeling, that you deserve money. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people think. If you have the script, I don't deserve money. And it doesn't matter if you have the thought, I shouldn't have that money script, or I really should believe that I deserve money. That has no bearing on the fact if you have a part of yourself that just believes you don't deserve it. So, and it doesn't matter whether you have money or not. You can have $1 billion and have a money script that you don't deserve money. Or you could be flat broke, bankrupt, and have the money script that I don't deserve money. Which kind of underscores the fact that money scripts often just are unaware of one's income or net worth. Not in every case, but in many cases, somebody who's very rich can have the same money script as someone who's very poor. All right, all that said, I would suggest that few people would argue that we all deserve the support that money can give us. And the support, the very basic support that money can give us, is to have nutritious food, to have safe and adequate shelter, and to have access to safe and reliable transportation. How many of us could say that we don't deserve those basic needs. And yet when we say, I don't deserve money, is saying, I don't deserve the support that money can give us. And when you're saying that I don't deserve nutritious food, I don't deserve safe and adequate shelter, I don't deserve safe and reliable transportation, aren't you really saying I don't deserve to live? I don't deserve life. So if you have that money script that I don't deserve money, maybe as I say this, you want to qualify that. Well, okay, I deserve money that would buy me all the essentials, but I don't deserve excess money. So maybe that occurs to you as you listen to this, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe you've never thought of it. Saying I don't deserve money, period, really means I don't deserve to live. So there's literally millions of people that have this money script because it's very, very common. And a person that believes they don't deserve money tends to have low self-esteem. I think that makes sense. They tend to earn less, and this is according to the research. And they tend to make ill-advised financial decisions. Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense, because believing that you don't deserve money can really mess up your emotional and financial well-being. Because money touches everything, right? And money touches our ability to have emotional health, to buy the things that contribute to emotional health. And certainly good food, good shelter, good transportation, a good job, having enough absolutely contributes to emotional health. So, like I said, we point out in Wired for Wealth, and this is a quote from the book, it says, it keeps people emotionally and spiritually poor, despite any wealth they may have. So believing that I don't deserve money will keep you emotionally and spiritually poor, despite any wealth you may have. So like I said, a ultra-rich person can have the belief that I don't deserve money. Okay, where does this belief come from? Well, at its very core, the belief that I don't deserve money, the belief that I don't deserve to live, of course, and I'm leaning into that to really underscore what's behind I don't deserve money, is deep-rooted shame. It goes to the very core of us. Now, I'm not talking about guilt. I'm talking about shame, because this is saying I don't deserve to live. I don't deserve to be supported. All right. Now, I said it's not about guilt. And oftentimes we talk about guilt and shame. Guilt and shame. Put it in the same sentence. It's kind of like millionaires and billionaires, right? Put in the same sentence. Well, there is a huge difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. And so there is a huge difference between guilt and shame. They're not the same. Let's flesh that out a little bit. Guilt comes from the awareness of having done something wrong. So, for example, you might feel guilty over making an ill-advised financial decision or a financial mistake. I can personally think of a number, at least 4, really bad financial decisions that I made that led me, in each case, to face bankruptcy. Really bad financial decisions or unforeseen consequences that made bad decisions even worse, etc. We all make wrong decisions. Every one of us. I've said before in the podcast that the average multimillionaire makes 3.1 really bad financial mistakes in their life, while the average person who's not a millionaire makes 1.6 really bad decisions. So you could argue the more bad financial mistakes you make, perhaps the wealthier you are. Now, I know that's not the case, but I think it does highlight the fact that people who acquire wealth often are willing to take risks necessary to accumulate that wealth. And many of them blow up. But obviously, if you have over $1 million and you've made 3.1 really bad financial mistakes, that means you've probably made double that in really good financial decisions. So making wrong decisions can absolutely bring up guilt and regret, sorrow about that decision that I made. But it doesn't mean, guilt does not mean we're fatally flawed or that our very being is defective. It means we made a mistake. I'm really sad about that mistake. I regret that mistake. I accept the consequences of that mistake. I need to adjust my thinking. I need to adjust my behavior. I need to adjust my beliefs, learn to do better, and then go on. That's something that we felt guilt over. But shame is not about what we have done, but who we believe we are. So while I can make a money mistake, if I feel shame about that mistake, it's more about who I am. It's like, oh, here's more prima facie evidence that I am fatally flawed, that I am bad to my core. So the type of shame that says, I don't deserve money, has underlying thoughts, because I don't deserve money isn't about a mistake, right? It's not about a mistake. It's about the general belief, I just don't deserve support. I don't deserve money. And the underlying thoughts to this are thoughts of being inadequate, being ignorant, being stupid, being defective or dirty, or being unworthy. You don't have to have had or have done anything wrong to feel shame. And shame, we haven't talked a lot about the Enneagram on the podcast, but there's 9 types in the Enneagram, 9 personality structures. We all have all 9 in us, but we're typically dominant in one. And as I've said before, I'm dominant in type 1. And the basic fear of a type 1 personality structure, which every type has its basic fear, but the basic fear of a 1 is that I am corrupt, I'm defective, I'm bad, I'm evil, a fear of chaos and things not being in order. So chaos in itself is defective, right? If I'm chaotic, I'm defective. So shame is really known to the type 1 who obviously believes that they to their core are defective. So it's really important to understand feeling guilt comes usually from a mistake, from a kind of a one-off decision. It's specific. You can go back to that event. But feeling shame often is very hard to go back to an event. It's not triggered by a wrong decision can reinforce the shame, but it doesn't cause the shame, if that makes sense. So, it's important we understand that guilt can be then lessened by acknowledging and feeling regret or remorse over a decision. And it can be lessened, it can be eliminated by modifying our behavior going forward so we don't make that mistake. Shame requires a lot more to move through than guilt. Changing shame isn't about modifying a behavior. It's not about modifying reacting. It's about modifying our self-image. And modifying our self-image is far more challenging. Have you ever said, oh, geez, you have low self-esteem. You need to get over that. You need to have good self-esteem, right? It doesn't work. It doesn't work telling somebody else that. It doesn't work telling yourself that. It's, we don't flip a switch and go from low self-esteem to high self-esteem. So I just want to reiterate that learning and practicing a better financial behavior isn't going to result in learning to believe we deserve money. So in case you have that confusion and you say, well, I just need to make better money decisions and then I won't feel shame. I won't believe that I don't deserve money. That's not what it's about. So like so many money scripts, modifying shame, helping us work through the shame is an inside job. It does not come from an outside behavior. So how, if I have systemic shame, how, if I believe that I don't deserve money, do I start to move through that? And I would suggest the first thing to do is start with becoming aware of what triggers your shame around not deserving money. Now, yes, your shame could be triggered every time you do make a mistake. But oftentimes, it's much broader and much deeper than that. It could be somebody wanting to give you something. Oh, I don't deserve that. Or watching somebody else be supported or get money and having the feeling, well, they deserve it, but I don't deserve it. So those are not mistakes that trigger the shame. So become aware of, when do you feel shame around money? What has just happened? What's been said? What hasn't been said? What's been done? What hasn't been done? So shame can be harder to recognize than guilt, okay? Because guilt can be tied right back to a mistake. But shame is systemic, and shame can be vague. You can, and I know I almost sound like a broken record, but you can go back to, oh, I made this wrong decision for guilt. But sometimes it's so hard to go back to any one event that you can say, oh, that's where my shame came from. So just become aware of what triggers the shame. And then once you start seeing a pattern with what triggers the shame, you can start to get curious about where that feeling of unworthiness first started. And like I said, it can be difficult because it can be born out of what we call complex trauma. And that's just like, that's like a 1,000 cuts. It's not one big traumatic event. It can be 1,000 cuts. And it could stem from childhood experiences that specifically aren't about money. So it doesn't necessarily have to come from money. It can come from messages and beliefs and woundedness that usually happens in childhood that isn't related directly to money, but can come out symptomatically. The shame can symptomatically come out in money. So that's the first thing. And sometimes by getting curious, by asking the part of you that feels so much shame, when did it first begin to feel this shame? And, you know, what was happening around that? And starting to kind of listen to the story of that part of you can be incredibly healing. And typically associated with those stories, associated with shame, are feelings. Feelings of despair, feelings of inadequacy, hopelessness. It can be a number of things. It can be fear. It could be panic. It could be a number of things. And it's really important just to identify the feelings associated with the shame and to begin to feel those feelings. So, and it's important to separate the thoughts from the feelings, because we tend to ruminate on thoughts, and connected to those thoughts are typically a feeling. So we need to work on not getting caught up in the thoughts, because we just ruminate on those, to let the thoughts go and really put the focus on the feeling, because the thoughts avoid us or help us avoid feeling the feelings. We have the thoughts so we don't have to feel the feelings, so we can push them aside. So separate the thought, separate the money script from the feeling that's under it, and start feeling the feeling. Now, I know this is really nuanced, but it's really important that talking about a feeling is not the same as feeling it. And I think I've told you this story once, that I had this epiphany a few years ago. Oh my God, feeling a feeling is not the same as talking about the feeling. And I thought to myself, I wish I'd learned this early on in my recovery. This would have made such a difference. And not too long after that, I was thumbing through like one of the first books I ever got when I got into recovery. And I saw this highlighted sentence, and it said, feeling a feeling is much different than talking about the feeling. And I'd highlighted it. So obviously it took me probably about 20, 25 years to be ready to hear that. So the next thing I want to bring out is almost any method of reducing shame is going to involve practicing self-compassion. All right? Now, I heard this for years, and it just didn't register. Oh, I've got to learn to be compassionate toward myself. And it just seemed like it was psycho mumbo jumbo. What do you mean? Start being compassionate about all my screw-ups, about how defective I am? How can I possibly have self-compassion over that? I mean, it's my fault because I don't deserve blah, 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 okay? So it's really difficult to start bringing self-compassion. And I only started to understand what self-compassion was when I began to see that the goal in self-compassion isn't to get rid of the criticism, is I ought not to criticize myself. I'd like to get rid of that part of me that criticizes myself. That it's to understand that part of me that is so critical, that voice in my head that is so critical of various things, really has a good intention. And that good intention is to keep me safe from outside attack and criticism. Because as a kid, usually a lot of that criticism comes from without. It can come from parents and authority figures. And there's a part of us that learns to be preemptive. Like, okay, you better get your act together, you bum, and stop doing this, because you're going to get it. If you don't buck up on your own, you're going to get it from without. So when we learn to understand that there's good intentions in the criticism, over time, the things are going to change because those outside attacks typically go away, right? But that part of us doesn't know they're gone. So it leaves that critical part of us, like Don Quixote, fighting imaginary enemies and doing internal harm to us to keep us safe. And one of the final things to consider in overcoming this systemic shame is getting support. The entire counseling profession is trained in helping people recover from systemic shame. So with some intention on your part and some new tools, almost anyone can modify a money script of I don't deserve money. And it's both possible, and I would say important, to come to understand that you do deserve the increased financial, physical, and emotional well-being that money can help provide. And it's possible to come to really believe that at the deepest emotional level in your soul, when you start to really work on and be with and understand the parts of you that feel they don't deserve money, and the parts that are critical, and all the constellations of the parts of yourself that are involved with this systemic shame. So I hope there's been a nugget in here for you and some insight. So thanks for joining me, and I look forward to being with you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.